Hello and bienvenue. I'm your host Anaïs, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Her Career, Her Coach, the podcast dedicated to empowering women to build a career they are truly passionate about. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, fantastic human, wherever you are on the globe. I am thrilled to welcome today's guest, Maud, for a new episode. Maud is from France, but she has always lived and worked abroad, including China and Canada. And she's here to share her story and journey with us, which sounds very exciting. So can't wait to dive in. And Maud, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and to let me share a bit of my story.
Yes, talking about the story, the floor is yours. Tell us everything about yourself. No pressure.
Well, I think you said the most important thing about me. I'm French. I'm living now in Canada, but I lived in China before. I lived abroad for 9 years now. I'm a marketing expert and I'm living my expatriation with my boyfriend and my cat, which I take with me in every adventures.
Oh, I love that. It's like a caring family that you can take with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have your cat? Very specific questions to start with. Did you have your cat when you were in China?
Yeah, I got him in China, so I didn't took him from France to China, but I got him in China, knowing that I would most probably move somewhere else sometimes. So I needed to plan to take him with me. It's a kind of responsibility that I assumed from the beginning.
That's very interesting. And I think I'm going to ask a follow-up question that's probably going to get us started on one of the conversations we had, the two of us, before that, which is, what would you say, or what would you consider is your cat's nationality?
Citizen of the world.
Yes.
Like me.
Yes, I was expecting such an answer. Yeah.
He does have 3 passports, which is a lot for an animal.
Oh, wow.
He has a Chinese passport, a European one, because between China and Canada, we spent 2 months in France preparing all the papers, the visa and everything, and we needed to do the same for the cat. And when we arrived in Canada, we needed to declare him and to find him a vet and everything. So I also have some Canadian papers that I still don't have.
Wow. Does that mean that you also have 3 passports, or is your cat the owner of the most number of passports in your house?
No, he's definitely the owner of all the passports, and I only have my French passport. China, the question was really not a topic, I would say. Just that Chinese nationality is quite particular. You cannot have 2 or more nationalities. So if I would have willing to take Chinese nationality, I would need to just forget about my French one. So we just keep a regular work permit in China. And in Canada, maybe one day, if I stay long enough, but from now, I'm just a permanent resident.
Fair enough. And I guess that prompted the question. You've said you've lived 9 years abroad. Obviously, I'm assuming in those 9 years, a lot has happened on the personal front, on the professional front, so a lot of different experience. I'm assuming as well, various experiences from, having a career in China versus having a career in Canada. What is it that you love the most about your life as it is now?
To move, to feel that I'm free to move and that I'm not afraid of working with new people, meeting new people in my personal life too. I feel this is a kind of freedom that I learned from the expatriation.
I might already know the answer, but do you see yourself going back to France one day?
Not yet. Never say never. I didn't knew when I left the first time that I would not come back for the next 9 years. But no, for now, no. And especially in the last 2 years, I would say the political and social climate in France is quite particular, as it is in a lot of other countries too. But I don't see myself coming back in this climate. But, and I think we talked about it before too, but I do think that living abroad made me prouder of being French and brings to me more advantages of what being French means, what's all the advantages we have as French people does not exist in other countries.
Yes, yes. Funny you've mentioned that because personally, I obviously I don't know, it's just a funny one. I mean, I haven't lived in like multiple countries. For me, it's been 8 years straight here. So maybe it's just more like a blend of both. But like you said, I completely resonate with what you said. Definitely still identify with a lot of like markers of being French, obviously being food obsessed, being number one. But at the same time, I feel like living abroad has given me the perspective and the choice to decide which part of the culture or which part of the markers of being French I own and take with me, and which are the others that don't necessarily work well for me and that I can actually blend into something else. So giving you a practical example, I would have never had the career I had should I have stayed, because I didn't do the right business school to access working for one of the big four companies. And I was way too young to make a career transition to become a consultant, and even younger to just start my own business. I know those things would have probably been harder in France because of the mentality and the mindset, which is why I'm so grateful to be here in the UK, because it's very much influenced by what you're capable of doing rather than the diploma that you have and the knowledge that you're bringing on a theoretical basis. And I don't know if you've got the same feeling, because again, your experience is different. You've lived in China and in Canada, but I'm curious to have your take on that.
It was a bit different for China, but for Canada, yes, definitely. I think even though I'm living in Montreal, which is the French part of Canada and everything, I think there is a lot of similarities between Canada and the more Anglo country and London. So yeah, culturally, it's the fact that your skills and what you've done count way more than your diplomas and everything. Yes, for sure. It's completely true here. I felt young when I was wondering if I wanted to go back to France or not. Like I did pass some interviews to go back to France at some moment in my career, and every time like my age was really a question that I don't feel here for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do feel what you're saying.
It's I don't know what's with age. And I mean, I've had that experience as well working with clients who are, for example, from Italy and Spain. I don't know if it's like a Mediterranean culture in a way, because, you know, France is not as Mediterranean as Italy and Spain, but still you can feel the common influence, especially me living up north, if I can put it this way. I could see the difference. And I don't know, there is something with like the number of years that you've done in a particular, you know, role or industry that will be assigned to you or labeled in a way. I mean, things are getting better and more open-minded, but I feel like there is still that part of the luggage and heritage, which is not necessarily something that is, I would say, healthy and hopeful for the future. So anyhow, moving on to your career, let's have a look at it from the achievement side of things. What would you say have been your top three?
Well, I think the first one is definitely just working in China. It was such like a huge step, and it brought me like so many skills and an open mind. Like it was just challenging myself every day and proving to myself too that I was able to do it, to take my first job in China, to work in a different language and everything.
What made you decide to go to China in the first place?
At first, it was for my studies. So I went to China for a master's degree. I didn't know that I would stay as much as I did. Like I went for 2 years. I learned Chinese. I passed my master, and then I was like, okay, so now I've done all that. Do I want to go back to France? And I just spent the last 2 years learning Chinese Mandarin. I said, okay, but if I go back to France, to Paris or wherever in France, like I will never really take the chance of all I've learned here. And Chinese work environment and opportunities were really really huge. So at first it was like, okay, just take one opportunity, let's see. And finally, I stayed a bit more than 6 years in China, worked in 2 different companies, and it was just, the market itself is amazing. You can do so many things. You have a right to do some mistakes because it's a market that forgets a bit. There is so many new things, new idea and changes that it's okay if you do mistakes. You will just start again with another name for your project and maybe it will work in a different province or something. So I was young, I was like just out of the university, and as a first job, I just felt that I would never have this kind of opportunity and this kind of chance in Europe.
Right. And do you still practice Chinese Mandarin nowadays?
No, not really. I know that it's somewhere in my brain because when we're traveling or when I'm like just listen some Chinese people in the street, in the subway or anything, I know that I still understand it. It was not my first goal, like to learn a new language. For me, it was more as a tool. And when I left China, I also needed like to left Chinese where it was and to start something fully new in Canada. But yeah, I hope that it's still somewhere in my brain. And if I really need it some days, it will come back.
It's very interesting what you've mentioned, the fact that this enabled you to use it as a tool to help you and, you know, get you to where you were in terms of the work that you were doing over there. And I think it also shows, you know, some degree of adaptability and of flexibility. I don't know to what extent your own experience was, because I know obviously I don't know this one. I know a little bit of Korean, and supposedly Korean is much simplified than Chinese Mandarin. So obviously keen to take your views on that, but definitely one of the hardest languages that you could learn.
Yes and no. Writing was difficult for sure, but Chinese is way more simpler than French in a lot of ways. Like there is almost no grammar. And we know that French is a super difficult language.
Yes, it's
what was hard was just to leave it there and just, I don't know, when you learn English, you always have like some words that you can try to compare and try to guess in some way. I know that a lot of French people are using some words that don't really exist, but at some point we manage to communicate. With Chinese, you cannot guess, like there is nothing in common. There is no history in common. There is no language history in common either. So if you don't know, you don't know. And that's part of why I wanted to learn Chinese, just to know a bit what was around me and at least to understand like some feeling and some, but it was more a tool for communicate that really, like, I'm not a translator. I love what I'm doing as a marketer and I would never be a translator. It's so hard for me just to translate from French to another language that was Chinese, but it could be English or I don't know what, without putting, you know, your feeling and your thought within it. When you translate, you just need like to give back what the person you're translating for is putting into their words. So I never saw that like as a goal to be like completely fluent and to be able to like linguistically to really have some skills. My main goal was to take the most of what I was living and to be able to communicate properly, to understand the culture and to, just to communicate with the people. But I was like that as a kid too, because I traveled a lot with my parents, and like when we were in Spain on the beach, and like I was just going to every other kids and saying, hey, I'm Maud, and like when I was not able to communicate, like I was learning, like, you know, in touristic gigs, like just how to say my name, how to say the name of a game, and just like the minimal needed to have an interaction with people.
Interesting. That actually made me curious. Do you feel like the way things have happened for you as a kid and being exposed to, such environments and such opportunities to, go with other people and speak with them and interact with them, do you feel this has influenced your choices to also go abroad?
Yes, for sure. I think childhood influenced us all. I was very lucky to have some parents that traveled a lot and that were never afraid to travel with 3 kids, because I have 2 sisters.
Wow.
And it was important for them to show us different things and just to show us the world. And after that, there is a part of who I am and the character that I developed that is not due to my parents, and that is just from really, like, as a kid, I wanted, but like for a really long time, to be a flight attendant. When all my friends wanted to be a teacher, princess, or I don't know why. And I wanted to be a flight attendant, to travel the world and to speak all the different languages.
That's really funny. I mean, funny and an interesting story. Absolutely. Sorry, I took you off path, but I thought it was quite interesting to dive a little bit more into that. Let's go back to your career achievements. So, as you mentioned, obviously the first one has been to work in China and in Chinese. What would be the other two?
I think the second one would be to being able to restart from scratch in Canada. It was quite a challenge. It's my boyfriend who got a job opportunity in Montreal, and it's hard as expatriates to have 2 jobs opportunities. So we just decided that I will follow. And I arrived with no jobs, and I found the first job that was not my dream job. And it was just like a time of a lot of doubts, did I make the right choice? I don't know, do I really have the capabilities that I think I have? Like in China it was easier because, I was like, the French marketers that speak Chinese, I knew that I had these capabilities, like to switch between the different cultures and languages, that even if my marketing skills was not top level yet, I would find a job. And I arrived in Canada, like, my Chinese had no value or almost no value. And I felt that I needed to prove myself. And finally, like, I just find a job as a consultant, a marketing consultant. And I did prove myself, and I did like evolve in the company, and it was challenging, and it was also like, I don't know, this good feeling of building something from scratch and having a success for myself.
Nice. Rewarding? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Love that. And I know, obviously, you said it's a challenge. I mean, I've seen that as well in the podcast. Some of the guests will come in. They obviously see, sometimes one of the best achievements they have was also one of the hardest challenge. This is also as you described this one. I would say, just hearing your story, it takes courage, right? Because you've got your other half who is like, okay, I do have a job. So what do we do? And you're like, okay, let's go there. And just obviously, like you said, potentially accept the fact that to an extent I do have to start from scratch, because some of the skills, like obviously the language, I can't necessarily take it with me. So yeah, it's definitely very, very courageous. How did you navigate that time?
Well, it depends. And, I was arriving in a new country. So it's also like you have your work challenge, you have your personal challenges to make yourself at home, to find an apartment, to meet some new people, to find a gym that you like everything, to find the right balance in your life. So it was not the best time. We arrived in Canada during COVID. I think it just took me a lot of patience to say that it's also why I like traveling and why I wanted to leave China and and to move is to challenge myself, to discover something new. And you cannot discover something new and arrive in your comfort zone. So, you know, it was mixed feeling between why I'm doing that, why I don't do like most of my friends, and keeping the same group of friends with my comfort zone and with everything that I know around me. And the fact that I know how much it can be rewarding and fun and like brings you so many things to go out of this comfort zone.
It's funny you've mentioned that, the big C word, the comfort zone, right? And obviously
Yeah.
it looks to me that you've been naturally throughout your personality, but also, like you said, throughout your childhood, how you were raised and the travel and everything, you've been sort of exposed to potentially stretching out your comfort zone, or at least seeing things that, you know, exist in other places that not necessarily form part of, you know, your comfort zone or other life as you know it. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks to me that whilst it is challenging, it looks like it's also something, probably one of the best thing that have happened to you. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know, for example, for me personally, I always strive to go out of my comfort zone. I love, you know, what you shared when it comes to your story as well. The China story, it looks like a big one. The point is the big chapter of your life that happened and started in China, and also what happened in Canada. Do you feel that you want to make sure you spend the rest of your life still learning, still sort of going out of your comfort zone to an extent? Or do you feel that actually, for example, that last one that you shared and moving and starting from scratch again, kind of in the middle of the pandemic, let's put it into context, do you feel there was like quite a big of a stretch out of the comfort zone, and it was maybe something you want to take a break away from for now?
I think both.
Okay.
It was definitely a big one, and I know that I want to stay, like, I don't want to move every 6 months and to like start over too often. But at the same time, I know that at some point I would need this new challenge, this new project, and that I feel bored quite easily. I think that's also why I'm so happy and so good in my job as a consultant, is that I have different kind of clients, different kind of challenges. And when you like you finish a mandate and you jump to another one. So I think like deep dive with my earth and everything, I know that at some point I would want something else, something new, and to challenge myself again. But not right now. I'm enjoying like being in Canada, having a group of friends and having quite a stability for some time. But I'm pretty sure that I won't stay 20 years at the same place.
Absolutely. I hear you. Very interesting. All right. Another achievement that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I think the last one was this year. I've become a manager in my company.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And run a team of 4 people. And again, it's a bit linked of what I was saying before. It's just like, it was proving myself that despite all the difficulties and the challenges, I got this reward and my skills were still here. And in some points that I've done the right choice.
What do you think is making this one an achievement? I know obviously what you said just now, what you shared around your skills and so on, but what is it that you feel the most proud of when it comes to this one?
Well, because I think human relationships are really important into my life. I know everything that I've said about like communicating with people, learn a new language to be able to understand people and to listen to different people. So I feel full of this within a manager. There is like my skills and my expertise in some points, but now it's my human skills that has been rewarded and recognized. And I think it was even more important for me than really my expertise skills or like some projects that I've done well.
I love what you said and how you qualified your human skills. I think that's a nice way to put it. I love it.
And I really try like to be a manager that listen to people and that put, that put this humanity within a job. We all spend like 8 years per day, 8 hours per day at work.
8 years a day is a very, very committing job.
And I think it's important to work with people that hear your feelings and let you express yourself. And I was looking for that in my previous job, and I'm happy that I can bring it to my little team of 4 people.
I love it. Well, congratulations. Absolutely great achievement. Thank you for sharing. I'd love to look at it from the other side. Maybe some of the things will come up again, but if I were to ask you now, reflecting on your career, your journey so far abroad, what would you say have been your top 3 career challenges?
Honestly, I think it's the exact same 3. Working in China, restart from scratch and becoming a manager. Because all of these achievements came from a challenge and came from a part of me that didn't knew where I was going. And that, it just like, I don't think you can really achieve something without being challenging.
And I think it goes back to the theme around they all involve you getting out of your comfort zone as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's what made me the proudest and like that qualified an achievement for me, because achieving something within something that I know completely and that is within my comfort zone, I don't think I would be able to really qualify it as an achievement. But for sure, like becoming a manager and being human is not always easy. And human skills are always the hardest to get. I started the year with like a huge human challenge with someone in my team that was like complicated in terms of relationship. Like we're at really hard time working together, and we needed to develop this relationship and everything. And of course, it's challenging. It takes a lot of energy. But it's when you succeed, or at least when you learn something from it, that it becomes an achievement.
I absolutely love your philosophy around achievements and challenges. It's funny you mentioned that, because I was with a client earlier this week, and we were talking, also reflecting on her career journey so far, because some of the questions that I'm asking in the podcast is some of the things that I'm diving with my clients on the one-to-one coaching. And same as you, like the way she listed her challenges, she actually framed it in such a positive way, and she had the same philosophy around it. And to be very honest with you, for me personally, I definitely recognize that for me, a challenge, it still needs to involve some form of like a difficulty, a stretch out of the comfort zone or whatever that is. But potentially it might not necessarily go through the list for qualifying as an achievement. On the other hand, though, I definitely, like you, would not consider anything that is an achievement if it hasn't pushed me to like the very extreme of my capabilities, or really forced me to think differently or learn a new thing or challenge me in this way. So I find it's quite interesting to hear your philosophy around the challenges side of things and the achievements. And I feel like it's a pretty positive way as well to see things, which means out of every challenge that might be coming your way, there is something for you to learn, something for you to grow out of, and potentially make it and transform it as your biggest achievement.
Yeah. I had an interview like a few years ago already, and, classic question like, what's your last success? What's your last failure? And I really answered like, I'm sorry, I'm part of the annoying person that doesn't have any failure. I have success and I have learnings.
Love it. What did they say?
And they were quite surprised. And I think they were surprised by my confidence on it. Like, I'm sorry, I will never qualify anything, especially professionally.
Yeah, I agree.
As a failure. I could probably find some personal failures at something I would hope to have done on another way or something, but professionally, really for me, it's success or learnings or both sometimes.
Yep. Well, definitely, I'm telling you, this is going to go as part of the podcast, sort of like summary. I love that way of reframing things. And I think it's important to push back, when you're facing either people or companies. So anyone listening in right now, if you got an interview that just made me uncomfortable because they pushed you to talk about the one thing I hate the most, which is your weaknesses. Like, talk about your strengths and weaknesses. First of all, I'm not a human swatch, right? I've got various components to my personalities. And also, it's not necessarily a weakness per se, it's just an area of improvement or whatever you want to, like, the framing is super key. So I loved how you said, sorry, I don't have failures, only learnings. Thank you for sharing that story.
Pleasure.
So we are the part of the podcast where we looking at the recommendations that you might be able to share. And one of the takeaway I'm having from this conversation is, first of all, there are no such thing as failures, only learning. Love that. By the way, did you know that FAIL is an acronym that stands for First Attempts in Learning? It was one of my colleagues as a coach who said that to me, and I loved it. And I just keep it and I just share it with the rest of the world.
I love it.
It's good, isn't it? It's literally in the same sort of areas as what you shared. So yeah, I just wanted to give you that. Any recommendations for, again, anyone who's listening to this podcast who is maybe considering leaving abroad, coming back to their home country, getting some challenges where they're just pushed out of their comfort zone, anything from your experience that you'd like to share for them to help them with their career next steps?
I would say never define something too much in advance, like just give some room to doubts and to uncertainty.
Okay.
It's also what's letting some space to new opportunities. Like, really, I hate when people say like, oh, you're living in Canada, like for how long do you think you will stay? I don't know, and I don't want to know. Like, if I would have arrived in Montreal saying that, okay, I would just stay for 1 year, how many doors that would have been closed professionally, for sure, because people want stability, but also personally, like, it's really hard to make friends when you know that you have an end date, and it's hard to make projects and everything. So yeah, I think it's important to, sometimes we want to have everything in control, and I think we all need to learn to just give some space to doubt and to something that you're not controlling, because it's at those moments that the best thing would happen.
Oh, what a great recommendation. I don't think I've had this one so far in literally 2 seasons, which is basically let life surprise you. Be open, be curious, don't overcommit to such a strict plan way too ahead of time. I love that. Awesome. Any other recommendations?
I would say take the chance, challenge yourself. I don't count anymore like the number of time or where I just follow my gut feeling and say, okay, let's see. And if it doesn't work whatsoever, like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And what can I learn from it? I can recycle when someone asks me in an interview, what's your biggest failure? And I can say, well, not a failure, a learning. And this is X, Y, and Z. There we go.
Yeah, exactly. Even if it doesn't go well, you will like meet some new people, building like some relationship around you, maybe. And that's what I've done when I arrived in Canada. Like, I took the first jobs that I had an offer with, because like for me it was quite stressful to be without a job and to be quite dependent of my boyfriend and everything. And okay, it was not my dream job, but I got a salary, and that's what allowed me like to have a first step within the working environment in Montreal, to meet some people, and finally like I just applied to another work, and it was the right one.
Yeah. And sometimes I feel that going through experiences that are just not necessarily working out for us, like this first job that you had in Canada, or even the example you gave us when it comes to someone that you had in your team, where it was quite hard to communicate and work with. I'd say if you are facing such experiences, don't let it burden you, but use it as a fuel for you to find either an alternative or a new route or a way that you can overcome the situation that will enable you to grow, to learn, and to just, keep moving and going to the next stage of your life or whatever that is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
So part of the tradition is also to ask you, what would be the one word summarizing the conversation we just had together today?
The challenge, probably.
Ah, yes. Yes, I'll take it. Challenge. I love that. Well, I have to say, Maud, it was a pleasure. It went super quick, as usual with these things, but thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for sharing your story with us, your challenges, as well as your achievements. It was awesome to have you.
Thank you. It was great.
If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with anyone you believe would benefit from hearing it. Because as you know, life is too short to feel unfulfilled at work.